You are now listening to Diamond in the Desert podcast, hosted by content creator Roshocker and former Dbacks pitcher Trevor McKenna.
Welcome back, everyone, to Diamond in the Desert podcast, episode 9. We are your host, Roshocker, with former Diamondbacks pitcher Trevor McKenna. How are we feeling on this lovely Thursday?
Man, feeling good. We got some good topics on deck. We got some fantasy baseball and the first games of 2024. Good combo.
Ooh, we already have opening day for a couple of teams. We're definitely going to get into that. But before we do, we have 7 days away from opening day. 7 days away. Shout out to former reigning National League Rookie of the Year, Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll, number 7 on the Diamondbacks. We cannot wait to see him continue his dominance on the field this season. And make sure to download the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you can find a podcast on. We are on the Believe Network, and we are going to the Dbacks Spotlight, and we got something special for you guys. We're going to talk about fantasy baseball. I know there's a lot of people that get into fantasy sports out there, and we're going to give our own perspective on what we think we should do in the draft and have some special insight on your Diamondbacks players. Now, the topic we want to start off with is finding the best value for your D-backs. Now, a lot of you guys might wonder, how do you get into drafting? There are some things to determine before you get into it, and the biggest thing is, what type of draft are you getting yourself into? Now, when you participate in fantasy baseball, there's 2 drafts. There's the rotisserie-based scoring, which is, short for roto scoring. With that, teams accumulate points throughout the entire season. In this scoring type, teams are ranked from first to last in each statistical category, such as batting average, home runs, stolen bases, ERA, and strikeouts. Points are then awarded according to the order in each category and total to determine an overall score with the league rank. Rotisserie scoring is the oldest and most traditional format for scoring a fantasy baseball league. Then you have your head-to-head format. The scoring format is the same as rotisserie league, but rather than simply tallying up a team's stats throughout the year, teams will compete in head-to-head every week, almost like, fantasy football type style. Now, here's the thing with the 2 scoring. With rotisserie, you have 162 games for each position. So catcher, 162 games. Now, you can have multiple catchers. You're going to have multiple players on your team. If a catcher has a day off, you can fill in that catcher in that same spot. But the thing you want to think about is, if you do that, you want to make sure you're getting the best value for that game on that day. So if I have a catcher, let's just say Gabe Moreno, who is going up against, a really good pitcher, or better yet, let me use the example of Jock Peterson. Jock Peterson, the D-backs are having him fill in, and he's going up against a lefty pitcher. Now, we know, we've been talking about it a lot on the podcast. He's not that good against lefties. If we put him in a lineup, we're most likely not going to get the best value compared to having someone that might be playing against the Rockies in Coors Field, and the scores could be high. So we want to make sure we get the best value, because if we just continue to fill in during the Roto League, when we come to September, we're going to run out of games real fast, and you better hope you got the best value, or else you're not going to be looking good in the standings. Now, we're going to be doing a lot of head-to-head. I do a lot of head-to-head, so we're going to talk about a lot of head-to-head. What I like about head-to-head is it's me against Trevor McKenna, week 1. We're going through the week. We're filling in our lineups. We're trying to get the most runs, the most RBIs, the most, bang for our buck in that week. And then what I like about it, too, is there's a lot of trash talk that you can have fun with, whether it be with a coworker, with a friend, for, week to week. I have this matchup. I like the head-to-head better than, just trying to fill in and seeing myself, climb up the ranks in a Roto League. Which ones would you favor?
Yeah, definitely the head-to-head. It sounds, really competitive. Like you said, a lot of trash talk there, right, as well. And I feel like you can actually watch it live and, see those points going against each other and keep texting back and forth, right? Oh, I got you. Oh, you got me. I got you. And you always go that back and forth competition. No, head-to-head sounds really cool, man. I like that.
Exactly. Head to head is really, really cool. And then there's a little strategy that you can form too. As you get, let's just say it's Saturday and the last games of the league is Sunday and you're losing in the runs and home runs category. And you might have some guys that's going to be off on Sunday. That's when you look into, okay, let me see who's on a free agent pool. And maybe I can pull some people up that can help me, add to those numbers. But then at the same time, if you're like borderline, doing good, maybe you're like a little bit up in those categories, but you're up in your batting average and you kind of don't want to lose that category, then it's like, do I want to play these guys to try and get the other stats, but it might tank my batting average? If you have a guy I'm going to throw this out there, like an Adam Dunn, who his batting average wasn't the greatest, but any given day can get you 2 bombs and a bunch of RBIs, then you kind of have to strategize which ones do you prefer, which ones are you going to try and, improve your stats on. What are some of your biggest home run hitters that, you follow just growing up that you used to like to watch?
Well, I actually want to give a crazy shout out, Roshocker. It's funny that you mentioned Adam Dunn. Was in Marco Island last week here in South Florida, and I ran into Adam Dunn. I'm not even joking.
No
the
way.
Man is massive in person. He is huge, man, huge. But no, going back to your question, home run hitters, like I'm really impressed by Jock Peterson this year. I think he's going to put up some really good numbers. And one guy I really like watching is Ronald Acuna. Obviously not a guy that's only known for home runs. He kind of does it all over. But another guy I really like watching, and the exit velocity he has off the bat is insane.
Oh, it's crazy. And it's funny that you met Adam Dunn because I always heard the nicknames like Paul Bunyan, like he was just that big and just that solid. And I never got to see him in person, but I did see him I did see him at the game when I went to a Dbacks game from far away. And he looked massive from far away. So I could only imagine standing next to him.
Yeah, man, he was huge. And he just like trumped over, his wife even. Like I walked past him. I was like, oh my gosh, you are a huge human being. Like I couldn't even imagine pitching against him. Like I thought I felt kind of tall, maybe like 6'1" with cleats on. No.
Now, some things that I like to look at when I'm about to get into a fantasy draft, the ways I like to attack a draft is, you want to look for, especially when you're starting your draft, for those 5-tool players, those players that can fill up a stat sheet. And, someone like a Corbin Carroll who can get you home runs, who can get you runs, who can bat great for an average, who can also get stolen bases. Guys that will fill up the whole session because it makes it easy for you to just plug them in and you're never really going to take them out. There's guys that they're reliable and you can trust. I also like to look at a few other things as well. I take in consideration their age. How young are they? Are they in their prime? Are they kind of going past their prime to where you hit that are they going to be good? Are they going to have a down year? I look at that. I look at their injury history. Were they injured the year before? Did they have like a big injury that, something that can linger into the next season that can come back? I look at their ceiling and their floor. I look at what team are they on? Are they on a team that's going to produce a lot of runs? Like there's a hitter behind them that's going to be able to drive them in a lot, Is it a team that's going to be competitive? They're always going to be, striving for more. So everyone's pumped up and they're all playing good. You tend to look at all of that to figure in who you're going to spend a high draft pick on. Number 2, I avoid drafting starting pitching early. This is my personal preference because I had too many occasions where I drafted a guy and they ended up with, an injury that got them out for a month, or they next thing you know, it's Tommy John surgery and they're out for the full year. That's happened a lot to me. So I kind of avoid drafting a pitcher in the first round. And I want to ask you a question. Here's another reason why I avoid drafting a pitcher. How many 20-win seasons did we have last year?
Oof. I don't even know. Was there one?
No, not one. In fact, we haven't had a pitcher win 20 games in a season since 2019.
Wow.
Yes. And in 2003, we had 4 pitchers that won 20 games. Every year, you was getting at least 3 or 4 pitchers to win 20 games. But since 2020, we have not had not one pitcher win 20 games. Now, here's some factors to that. Nowadays, teams are very cautious about innings pitched for their guys because they want them to be able to play the long game. You know, they want them to last throughout the season. They want them for that pennant run in September. So, and then we got a lot of technology. And as we talked about in the past, you know, there's a lot of stats. There's a lot of just, you know, really mental care, self-care. You know, hey, we're going to give you extra days off, you know, to heal up, even if you feel the slightest pain. You know, and a lot of the what we would call old heads will be like, well, this day, you know, it's weak, you know, because back in the 90s, you got Cal Ripken that will play 2,000 plus games in a row and would not sit out. You know, we had guys that will pitch 35 games a year. And even if they have a little scratch or, you know, a little scratch in their finger or whatever, they're still going to, if they have a blister, they're still going to pitch. But nowadays, guys are making tons of money, millions and millions. You want to protect your investment. What do you think with all that? And, you know, just with it's maybe load management now. Do you like it? Are you for it? Do you think it's a great thing that teams are really taking care of their starters and not, you know, going at them, having them pitch 9 innings a game all the time?
Definitely. I think you're right. It's about protecting the investment. I think it's smart from a GM standpoint, from a front office standpoint. Just personally myself, I was always a guy that wanted to train to still be able to do that, right? So when there was multiple times in college, even at Division I level, there were times I threw 125 plus pitches in a game because I knew that my bullpen was struggling that day because they had to throw 6 innings the day before. The starter didn't do well the day before, right? And it's all about really training your body to do that, right? So instead of throwing a 15, 20 pitch bullpen in between, hey, let's tick that up. Maybe we're throwing 50 to 60 pitches in a bullpen, right? Really training our body and our arms to be able to throw more. The one thing I will say is that when we're looking at starters and really, you know, cutting that line a little bit sooner than usual, like you said, no 20-win season since 2019, you know, guys are not really throwing past 100 pitches anymore. Even though that's a good thing, it's protecting them. What it's really doing, though, is affecting the bullpen, right? You're going to see probably a lot of injuries in the bullpen just due to guys throwing a lot. And it's not that they're throwing a lot of pitches in a game. They're having to throw more consecutively, right? You know, the difference between a starter going 5 innings and 7 innings is 4 innings for the bullpen versus 2 innings for a bullpen. That makes a huge difference. And that's why usually when you get closer to the postseason, teams are always calling up guys to get into the bullpen because their bullpen is tired beyond belief. They don't get a lot of relief. So I see some positives from it, but also some negatives as well.
Now, what do you think? You know, this rule has been in place for a couple of years now. You know, back in the early 2000s and, you know, and past, you were able to, you know, let's just say there's a situational type of batter where you can put a pitcher in for, you know, just 1 out, take them out, get another reliever in. But now, because they want to speed up the game, a pitcher has to pitch to 3 people before they can get pulled out the game. Do you think that's a great thing for the game right now?
As a baseball fan, not really. I think people that are watching baseball are true baseball fans. I don't think they really care too much that, you know, the game difference might be 25 or 30 minutes, right? They'd rather love that chess match, right? That slow pace game and try to figure things out. And it also can cause injuries as well. You know, when we go even look at the pitch clock, right? guys have been throwing their entire lives used to taking a minute between pitches sometimes. Their bodies are used to that. When having to change that to 20 seconds, that's a huge difference, and try to figure out how to do that and get your body prepared for that. So I like the positive of getting games moving. Trust me, I've been in some 5-hour games. I get it. It's a long day, right? But also, there's always negatives with everything that you put in possibly into the game, and you always have to make sure that the pros are better than the cons. I think I will say it will speed up the game a little bit more, especially like lefty specialists, right? Lefty coming in and just to get that one lefty hitter and coming right out. There's some time in between getting that guy in the bullpen, doing his warm-ups, getting him out. But that was such a beautiful art, right? A lefty being able to come in and be a lefty artist. And that's what I miss sometimes, is just that art form of baseball as well.
Yeah, same here. Now, as we get into the mid rounds, I personally like to stock up on closers. They're typically available, and with closers alone, they will help you cover saves, strikeouts, whip, and ERA. Most teams are going to they're going back to the old ways where you're starting to see more closers getting 30 saves. There was a time where it seemed like there was just a rotational of people closing a game. And, I don't know if it was a way to keep the bullpen fresh or just to have different looks out there. But we weren't seeing, your main guys getting 40, 50 saves anymore because they were mixing it up. But now, we had a lot of 30-save closers last year, and they're going back to that. So I'm looking at more relievers in the mid-rounds to really help boost those stats up. Number 4, I like to stock up on quality pitchers and hitters in the mid-round as well. You want to look for the guys who have potential to break out or players who are simply consistent with their numbers. And there are some really great value pitchers in the mid-rounds that, they're consistent. They might not give you a whole lot of strikeouts, but their ERA will be consistently good. They'll get a lot of innings pitched. You eat those innings up. And there's some Yahoo leagues where you have to get at least a minimum of 20 innings pitched for a week for you to qualify for pitching stats. So you want to kind of look for those consistent guys. And then number 5, at the end of the drafts, I love to look for potential sleepers. Guys who might not be in the league yet. They might be in the minors. Someone like a Jordan Lawler, who the moment he gets caught up, he's going to put on a performance. But they're on the Cubs to get, they're going to make an impact immediately. And one guy I like to talk about from last year is Elly De La Cruz. He got caught up in June, and oh my goodness, it was like fireworks, and it ignited that Cincinnati Reds team, and they were competitive for the rest of the season. And you look at his stats, he finished with 91 hits, 67 runs, and 35 stolen bases after being caught up in June. So there's guys that are in the minor leagues that you hear about that are borderline ready to make an impact. And Jordan Lawler, I think, is one guy that could definitely do that.
Definitely. And I would argue maybe Blaze Alexander as well. Guy that's probably might start in the minors and make his way up as well. And talking about sleepers, man, I think another thing to look at is to look back at relievers that have experience being openers. I don't know if you remember that, relievers starting out the games and the starter coming in afterwards. Usually those openers do really well. They have really good ERAs because they have way more time to get prepared for that game. They have all the time to stretch and get ready versus, rush, maybe throw 10 pitches and get in. So maybe even look into that. That could be able to kind of boost that ERA a little bit and kind of get those innings as well.
Yeah, that is true. Absolutely true. Now we're going to look at your Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, here are some pre-draft rankings that Yahoo had, and we're going to take a look at a lot of the guys that are on the team. The first guy, of course, who is ranked number 5 in Yahoo, Corbin Carroll. They have him projected to bat .290 with 111 runs, 28 home runs, 76 RBIs, and 50 stolen bases. Now, if you're in that spot, that mid-tier spot where you're drafting from 4 to 8 and Corbin Carroll is available, I would snag him because just like we talked about earlier, he can do it all. What do you think about Corbin Carroll?
Yeah, absolutely. He's gonna blow up every stat for you, right? He's gonna get it with batting average. He's gonna get it with runs. He's gonna even do it with home runs, which is honestly crazy to think about that man can still do that with all that speed, right? RBI, stolen bases, he's going to do it all for you. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. If that man's still on the board, you might as well take him.
Yes, I really like his value at 5. I would definitely consider taking him. The next guy, it drops from 5 Corbin Carroll all the way to 82 Christian Walker. And they have him projected to go bat 253 with 82 runs, 30 home runs, 93 RBIs, and 6 stolen bases. Now, here's the thing. Here's my issue with Christian Walker. We like him. He's a really good player. Really good player. But his rank at 82, I don't know. You know, it's the batting average could be a little bit low. It's no slight on Christian Walker that I would rather have this next guy that we're going to talk about than Christian Walker. I mean, honestly, and I'm going to bring him up right now. Ketel Marte, he has potential to put up stats almost similar to Corbin Carroll. Maybe, not as much as the stolen bases, but we've seen what he can do this spring. He's going to get a lot of runs, a lot of home runs. What do you think about Ketel Marte?
Yeah, Ketel Marte having that rank of 101 really surprises me. Again, not a knock against Christian Walker, but no. I mean, the guy is just, I mean, what he especially did last postseason, I thought his rank would be a little bit higher. But a guy, I mean, even the stats that they put here, 274 batting average, 82 runs, 20 bombs. I think he's going to have a lot more than that. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be always on base, and he's going to be driving guys in. So that might be one of our sleepers, in the top, just under 100 that maybe a lot of people were sleeping on.
Exactly. Christian Walker, where he's at right now, I would say that's a fair rating. But Ketel Marte, that is really, really, really good value. I was definitely seriously consider drafting him higher because he has big time potential. The next guy, Gabe Moreno, catcher for the D-backs, they got him ranked 180, batting 303, 51 runs, 13 home runs, 61 RBIs, 5 stolen bases as well. My thing with Gabe Moreno is this can be a steal as well, especially, the catcher position, and you can probably talk a little bit more about this. Their craft is one of the toughest out there. They put in a lot of work. People don't realize to be in that position on the field for like a full game, it's tough. Wearing all that gear can be really taxing on the body. So we don't necessarily see catchers have great offensive stats. We do have some rare exceptions where we have some really good offensive catchers. But for the most part, they're mostly for defense and, to have that relationship with the pitcher. But Gabe Moreno, if we remember, he was elevated higher into the lineup in that Philly series and really took it and ran with it. If we get that Gabe Moreno, that 180 Yahoo rank is excellent value.
No, I think you're absolutely right, man. I think he's going to have a really breakout season this year. He's kind of showed glimpses of that, right, and made a name for himself. But I think this is really going to be his breakout year. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I would argue that catchers probably have the most demanding season out of anybody, right? Their bodies are hurting more than ever than you compare to anybody else on the field. I mean, they're in that squatted position all day, every day. They're having to block up balls and take, 98 mile an hour fastballs off the chest. They are really going through it. And for these guys that also have offensive success is just impressive because they're going through it physically.
Exactly. The next guy we'll talk about is Lourdes Gurriel. His rank is 196. Probably have the best hair on the team, and he's a guy that offensively can really get going. They have him projected 277 batting average, 63 runs, 18 home runs, 75 RBIs, 4 stolen bases. I really see this as great value as well because I feel like he can actually produce more than what they're projecting for this year.
Definitely, man. Super powerful guy and super energetic, and he really just brings the team together. Again, I think the ranking's pretty low. I think he's going to have another breakout season. You saw what he did with the Astros in the postseason as well. Just a guy with a lot of postseason history that knows how to get there and how to stay there, which is probably the most important.
Exactly. Next guy, Eugenio Suarez. His Yahoo rank is 252. They have him projected 232 batting average with 72 runs, 27 home runs, 92 RBIs. He's a big bat, plain and simple. Now, his batting average, might not be the greatest, but if you're looking for power, let's just say, early rounds, you went with more, batting average. You went with more speed, guys that have stolen bases, and you're kind of lacking hitters that can hit home runs. You can get someone this late in the draft who will show that power off. He's done it in the spring already. He's done it in the past. This is good value if you're looking for home runs.
Yeah, I like him already, man. I just hit a bomb with him in MLB The Show yesterday, so I'm ecstatic. I know he's ready. I know MLB Show's got it right, but I think Yahoo's got to figure it out, right? No, all jokes aside, man, super solid hitter. And you're right, batting average might be a little bit lower, but he's going to put that ball in the seats. No doubt about that.
Exactly. Now, Jordan Lawler, this is an interesting ranking. They have him ranked at 290. They have him projected to bat 248, 60 runs, 11 home runs, 38 RBIs, 20 stolen bases. Now, again, he's going to start off in the minors. Would you want to use this draft position, at this area to draft someone this early? One thing to consider is how did you draft beforehand? Are you comfortable with the guys you drafted to where you can look at someone like Jordan Lawler and be like, you know what? My team is good where I drafted. I can take a chance and stash him at this stage and not have to worry about it, knowing that he's going to produce later. It's a gamble, but it's a gamble that can pay off.
Definitely. I think, like you said earlier in the podcast, I think he's going to be a sleeper. I think a lot of people are going to overlook him. And it could be your secret weapon, at the end of the season.
Exactly. Alek Thomas, I love this. 310, batting 263, 58 runs, 12 home runs, 47 RBIs, and 10 stolen bases. I think those numbers are really down compared to what he can do. I really like this ranking. If I'm up here in my lower stages of the draft and I'm looking for someone that's going to be consistent, this is the consistent numbers that we're looking for. He's someone that I might think about taking.
Yeah, guys, I'll give you my advice. I've seen this guy in person. I played with him. I see his work ethic. I think he's still maturing as a baseball player, and I think this is going to be the year where he really fits in. He really starts figuring it out. I think that 12 bombs is low. I think personally, I'm expecting at least 20 plus, to be super honest. And he's going to be a guy that really bats at a high average as well. I would like to see him closer to 300 because I think that's realistically where he's going to be at.
And then another guy I want to mention, Jock Peterson. Now, we might disagree on this one. He has his rank at 322, batting average 252, 56 runs, 17 home runs, 57 RBIs. For me, knowing that he's a platoon guy, that they're mostly just going to have him bat against righties, I don't know if I want that on my fantasy team when I'm needing guys to play almost every game, in a head-to-head matchup.
No, I actually agree with you. From a fantasy standpoint, it might be pretty tough because you're thinking about a guy that it might not succeed 50% of the time against lefties, right? That's the way I'm thinking about it from a GM standpoint. Trying to run my fantasy league here. Again, he's going to do great this year. Yeah. 17 bombs, that's way too low. That's going to be a lot higher. I can promise you that. But again, at 322 might still be a good pickup. And again, we'll see how many opportunities he has against righties. And maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe he'll do something crazy against lefties that he hasn't done in the rest of his career.
And you're right. 17, I feel, is low as well. I wonder if Yahoo kind of takes, a lot of what they did last year and, kind of put it into this year. But you look at the big difference. Giants ballpark, where it's hard to hit home runs, compared to Chase Field, where you can launch them and the ball goes flying. Here's some interesting rankings. Now, we're going to go into fantasy notables. Not going to really talk about the numbers, but just mainly where these guys are ranked. We got Randall Grichuk at 442. Now, I haven't really seen him play a whole lot of spring training, But then after him, we have all-star Geraldo Perdomo at 542.
Wow. That's surprising. That's very surprising. I think he is a player that is super dominant, brings energy to the field every day, and he showed up during the postseason last year with that huge home run. That's going to be a huge late pickup for fantasy guys, definitely.
Exactly. And that's stuff that, as fantasy drafters, you want to look at that. You want to the rankings are like this. I mean, another guy I'm about to mention, rank 1072, Jake McCarthy. Jake McCarthy.
Wow. I just think from the standpoint of what he does defensively as well, how many runs he's going to save you. Yeah. And how many balls he's going to track down in the outfield, but also how many stolen bases he's going to have. I mean, he's right up there with Corbin Carroll. Like, the boy can run. So, yeah, another late pickup it's like a golden nugget right there, man. Take him.
Now, if you're looking for a big sleeper, here's some other D-backs, but the last guy on the name is someone that you must stash, okay? We got Jace Peterson at 1232. He's a defensive guy. He's not going to really give you a lot of offensive production. We have Emmanuel Rivera at 1242. He's actually has some power and has some nice pop. It's just with him, how much playing time he's going to get. 13-16, Pavin Smith. We're going to actually talk about him a little bit later in the podcast, but he can hit pretty well as well. And then last, Blaze Alexander, 1759. This is a guy we've been talking about, I feel like, every episode, who is doing it all. I mean, we're talking possibly 5-tool stuff, stolen bases, home runs, and he is 1759? What is going on?
That's amazing, man. And I hope Blaze sees this podcast to realize that Yahoo thinks that 1,758 players are higher than him, and that's going to give him that extra little fuel, man. Because, I think he might start off in the minors. We'll see what happens, but he's going to come on the scene when we least expect it and just blow everything up. I can't wait to watch it.
I cannot wait as well. Now, I'm going to touch on some fantasy pitchers. I know, I really want to stay away from starters early. But Zach Gallen, they have him ranked 43. There's 9 other pitchers that are ranked higher than Zach Gallen. And I really like Zach Gallen in this spot. If I were to look for a starting pitcher, he is one I would definitely take. There were a few names that are above him. I'm not going to mention them that I was a little bit questioned on because a couple of guys had some, injury issues. One guy that was ahead of him, we'll talk about him later, got lit up early this morning, only pitched 1 inning. So Zach Gallen at 43, I feel like is really good value. Paul Sewald at 86 is really good value. Really good value. They have a lot of closers above him. And the thing you want to look for with closers is, one, are they going to be in a situation to where they're going to be able to close a lot of games? The Diamondbacks have a great squad, and I'm not just saying this because, we're doing a podcast. They legit have a really good squad and a really good offense to where he's going to be in that position. Number 2, Paul Sewald has added a pitch that's going to help him get more strikeouts. What do you think about Paul Sewald, where he's at right now?
No, I think he's the perfect pickup, right? And he's the type of closer that you really don't have to worry when he comes in. Like, you're not going to have to worry that he's not going to throw strikes or walk the bases loaded right away. He's going to attack guys and get outs, whether it's the strikeout, pop-ups, or now ground outs with that changeup, right? So nothing that you have to get really, really crazy about in terms of, oh no, like here comes one of the other closers that are going to walk the bases loaded and screw everything up. No, this guy is going to come in, do his job, and be super professional about it. So if you guys want a solid closer on your fantasy team, that's him, 100%.
And then we have a couple other pitchers to talk about. At 151, we have Merrill Kelly, who is just a solid pitcher. Innings eater, will get you some strikeouts. We'll have a decent ERA. The ERA will probably be around the 3s, 3.5-ish. Brandon Pfaadt is the same guy. He looked really good in the playoffs last year. I know the regular season stats didn't look too good, But if we get the playoff thought that, we got last year, then he might be someone that we can actually look to draft a little bit higher. And then the last guy, Eduardo Rodriguez, 216. If you haven't drafted yet and you're drafting this weekend, you might have a little concern about, an injury that he suffered in his last spring. And make sure to download the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to a podcast on. We're going to talk about the spring training results. And Tuesday, the Dbacks played the Cubs. They won 4-1. They've been on a winning streak in their spring training games. They've been doing really, really good. Blaze Alexander went 2 for 3 with a run and an RBI. Pavin Smith went 3 for 3 with a run. And then we had Eduardo Rodriguez that we talked about just a minute ago. He left the game early with lat tightness. There's no timeline for his return yet. It's one of those injuries where you really got to, be careful with. Coach Tolo says, hey, we're going to send him for an MRI. We're kind of just going to wait and see what the results say. Have you had any experience with that injury or seen some of your teammates that might have suffered that and, what it took to be back on the road to recovery?
Yeah, a lot of fans will see a lat tightness and not think too much of it because they think it's not associated with the arm. But you have to remember that lat, that muscle, is attached to the back of the shoulder, which is obviously feeling strain from some type of situation. From my experience with guys that I've witnessed that had lat tightness, could potentially be some nerve things when it's attached to the shoulder. So they'll probably dissect that a little bit more, figure out what exactly is going on, kind of take a closer look at that. But again, not as extreme as if he was feeling tightness in his elbow or his forearm or his shoulder. So if he was have any tightness, that's probably the place to have it. It's usually like lat or maybe lower back. Okay, maybe he's just feeling the normal, strain of pitching, right? Because again, we're throwing in a position that humans are not supposed to over our head, right? So I expect a pretty quick return. I think he'll be ready for opening day, but something to keep close eyes on, especially in terms of fantasy as well.
Definitely will be watching that. Christian Montes de Oca had a great game. 1 innings pitched, he gave up a hit, a walk, had 2 strikeouts. And then Brandon Hughes did 1 2/3 with 3 strikeouts. Overall, what did you like from the Diamondbacks in that game?
I just want to point out Blaze and Pavin Smith, man. Towards the end of spring training, they are continuing to make a name for themselves. And again, Blaze is trying to make it as difficult on the GM and the front office as he possibly can. And guys, I'm telling you, we just talked about it. That is a potentially good sleeper pick for this year in terms of fantasy.
Add him. Wednesday, the D-backs played the Rockies. They won 5-1. Eugenio Suarez went 1 for 3 with a home run and had a walk. Christian Walker went 1 for 3 as well, had a home run. Tommy Henry had a good performance. 3 1/3, no hits, 3 strikeouts, and a walk. We had Joe Mantiply with 2/3 pitch, 2 strikeouts. Scott McGough, 1 inning, 2 strikeouts, only gave up a hit. Bryce Jarvis, 3 1/3, 1 hit, 1 earned run, and 3 strikeouts. What performances did you like from the Diamondbacks-Rockies game?
I just think the overall performance, I think it's giving us a great glimpse of game 1, right, against the Rockies and seeing what we're capable of. I like how we didn't throw the kitchen sink at them, so we're not giving away all of our secrets for game 1. But really happy with Tommy Henry getting closer and closer to that 4 innings, getting ready for the season. He's really looking solid and potentially a guy you might want to look in fantasy as well. He's going to be super dominant. He's going to be a guy that's going to probably have an under 3 ERA, and he's just going to be a workhorse for you. He's not afraid to throw more pitches and really force the fact like, hey, coach, I need to stay in the game. I feel fine, right? He's not going to be like a guy, oh, I'm 70 pitches, I'm done. No, he's going to be like, all right, coach, I know I'm at 90, but let me go out one more time. He's that type of mentality. And we saw that in the College World Series with him. He played for the University of Michigan, dominated in the College World Series in his last year. And he was that type of workhorse. So I'm excited to see what he does this season.
And you always want someone like that on your team. We have a letter in our mailbag today. It's from John in Wisconsin. He asks, after watching the Dodgers in the International Series, do you still find them as dominant as predicted before the season? What do you think, Trevor?
I love this question. And I think I think the Dodgers were predicted to be so much higher than the Padres, but I think that was answered, that the Padres are going to come and compete. No, they don't seem as menacing as they was with all the money that they spent, right? They're humans. I think this brought a really good reality that, hey, all these players are humans and anybody can beat anybody on any given day with baseball.
Absolutely right. They split the series 1-1. I mean, you can argue that if it wasn't for an error, the Padres could have won both games. It's one of those things where it's a long season. And we saw it last year with the Dodgers. The Dodgers looked like they was going to be a really dominant team early on. And then once they got to September, they'd had injury after injury after injury to where they limped into the playoffs. They were a 100-win team, but limped into the playoffs, didn't really have a whole lot of starting pitching. Their hitting disappeared, and they were beatable. As you saw, the Dbacks took care of business. I agree. I think that, it looks scary. Anytime you see someone spend money, $1 billion to be exact, more than $1 billion, and they're adding, an MVP to your lineup. They're adding an all-star pitcher to their lineup. They're adding a guy who we had never seen or heard of. We just knew from, the press and everything that this guy is great. One of the best pitchers out in, Japan. It was like, whoa, we got to compete against that. But then now, you start to see there's a lot of things that are swirling around. And it's like, hey, the NL West, everyone from... And I hate to, sorry, Rockies, I apologize right now. But 1 through 4, it's going to be competitive like crazy. We saw the Padres add a pitcher. We saw the Giants add Blake Snell, and they already have Webb. And, the Diamondbacks, they have a great, pitching staff as well. And they have a really good young offensive core and that can play defense too. It is going to be a fun national, probably the best division in the majors.
Definitely, man. And no bash against the Dodgers, but I think the Diamondbacks and Dodgers have different priorities, right?
Yeah.
Diamondbacks spend money to get wins, and Dodgers spend money to get people in seats, right? And Diamondbacks are the type of team that are kind of like that Moneyball situation where they figure out, okay, what team are we? We're going to be a team that gets on base. We're going to steal bags and we're going to hit for power a little bit, but we're going to play small ball and we're just going to keep grinding and grinding and grinding after you until you wear away. Whereas Dodgers are like, okay, we'll get a couple pieces and maybe it'll make a difference. But that's not always the case, right? Not just because you buy a star, you're going to automatically get wins, right?
Exactly. Well, that is episode 9 of Diamond in the Desert podcast. Remember, you can listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you can find a podcast on. I am Roshocker with my guy, Trevor McKenna, and we will catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Diamond in the Desert podcast.